We'll first of all look at the user interface that the system has generated for a particular task. And the task we're going to look at is a compliance task. In case you're not aware, this is a fairly common task in a broadcast workflow. That is, content arrives at a facility and it has to be viewed and marked up, often for censorship or to check it complies with the broadcast regulations. And in some cases, one operations team might be doing this for multiple languages, multiple territories, and so on. For the purposes of this demonstration, we've just put together a fairly simple workflow to show how you would build something like this. If we look at the task that someone who's doing the compliance job would see here, there's a queue of jobs that are waiting for compliance. If we select one of them, we get an interface where we can see the video, and we can then add a frame accurate marker at a particular point and then mark the out code, and that creates the marker. At the end of the process, we can then either export to Vantage in this case, which would be a transcode farm used to stitch the content together based on some pre-built instructions, or in this case we've got export to Adobe Premiere, so we could take this into an edit for doing a more complex edit to, for example, remove swearing or to mask things. Again, this is just an example of a process. It's not a complete one or an actual one. If we look at this from the point of view of the board, what we'd call the board, these are the steps in this particular workflow, and the jobs are the boxes inside each one, and we can move things from one step to another in here, and the ones that are in green are the ones we're allowed to move it to. So from there, I can only move it to one of those two steps, for example. So that's the sort of overview of a workflow. Now we'll look at how we built that in the toolkit using the different microservices. So this is the configuration tool, and the configuration tool on the left, we have the different elements of the system. So we've got global system things at the top there. That's used, for example, so you can have a test system and a main system, and you can deploy to those different systems to check a workflow out before you implement it, or to check changes to a workflow. All the systems have alarms and alerts. This is to allow you to report on faults in the system. You can automatically send emails or report up to a network management system, or perform other actions when you get an alarm. The hosts are the machines that are running the system, and in this case, these are all virtual machines, and that's the usual case now. They would be virtual machines, either full-scale virtual machines or containers. And then we have the services. I won't go into the services in detail here, but these are all the services that are running currently on the demo system. And then perhaps the most interesting part is to look at the workflows. So if we look at the workflow we just saw, so this is the same workflow but from the design point of view, and you can see how each of the boxes here is linked together to form the workflow. So for example, the reason we could only move from the compliance state, compliance markup in progress, we could only move to those states that there are lines to from that box. If we look at one of these boxes and then how it's set up here, in this case, there's an option also to put a script in here, and the script can be used to make a state decision. So for example, I might decide whenever I complete a compliance markup, I want to send an email. And in this case, I want to talk to the bus, so I type Busby dot. It then says, these are things you can do. And for example, I might want to send an email, so I'd click email, and then it'll give me the parameters that I need to do to send to send an email here, I need the to address and the from address and the body of the message. And I can pull anything out of the job that I want to as well. So as a job moves through the process, at any stage, more information can be added to the job, and that can then be used in subsequent stages. So you kind of have this idea of state. You can either build things that messages just go from service to service and something happens, or you can build things where, for example, a file arrives, then it's processed, then it moves, the idea of things moving through from one step to another. And both of those, or a combination of both of those, is how we normally would build a system. The scripting here is just used as a way of gluing the system together. So you can use scripts, or you can use other decision-making processes to glue things together. And you can use, on the left here, you'll see these different steps that you can insert. So for example, if I wanted to checksum the file as it was going through, I could add that block and put a line to it from a particular state. Maybe we do it on before we do the, okay. We can decide how we want to do that and just move things around. We also in here can define forms that need to be filled in at different points in the process. So in here I can use these different field types and create a form for someone to fill in at a different point in my workflow. And I can create different boards for viewing those. Quite commonly, we'd create dashboards. So if we go back to the user interface, you might have a dashboard that would show you, for example, how many things are waiting to be processed, the rate that things have been transitioning. And you can either look at, on the left here, we're looking mainly at things that are to do with the workflow. And on the right here, we're looking at technical parameters. Most systems, these might be separated out into two dashboards. So you might have a technical dashboard for use by the engineers, and you might have a number of operational dashboards that show overall progress of things through the system. The idea here being that you're using the system to glue together all the other systems that you have, transcoders, editing farms, that sort of thing. You can monitor all the services in the system, and you can stop and start them and so on centrally again using this interface, which has the current state of all the services, whether they're running or not, and the version that they're running at.